Strap in. Today we're firing up the debut that hit like a lightning bolt. Van Halen's Van Halen. It's the sound of LA in 78 with the amps dimed, the hooks huge, and Eddie reinventing what a guitar could do in real time. This record didn't just introduce a band, it announced a new era. Stay with us.
Get ready for the 3324 podcast, where lifelong friends Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber share their love of all things music and movies. Dean has directed short films and is a music trivia buff. And Eric, trained in audio engineering, brings his extensive knowledge of music and film to the conversation as they discuss, debate, and celebrate their favorite albums, films, and much more.
Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. Eric, we're going back to the beginning. We've done middle.
We are. And
we've done middle Van Halen. We've never done end of life Van Halen or birth Van Halen.
Birth Van Halen. That was
birth there.
We were there. Unfortunately, we were there.
Yeah, but you know what? In 78, I don't remember hearing about Van Halen. Like
I did. Of course, my brother had it. And that was my introduction to Van Halen.
Okay.
Of course, beyond that, I didn't pay much attention until 84. So, but this album, it was definitely on the turntable many, many times. I heard it. It was great. It was something new. It was fresh at the time. I was digging it.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. Well, we've got a. We've got a full load here. So, Eric, why don't you go ahead and introduce the players in tonight's game?
My goodness. Well, I think we'll go with the guy in my left, top left.
You're not going to know.
Beloved, fellow. We've known this guy for forever, and we're happy to have him. Rob Brisbane, thank you for being here.
The Priz.
Hello,
Priz. We always enjoy having you on. So my bottom left is our resident music expert. He puts us to shame every time. So Chris Clark,
good to be here, man. I'm excited about this one.
Yeah. And then, of course,
all the rest,
and bringing up the slack.
Bottom right-hand corner is our resident everyman perspective. I love him. I love you when you give your sort of your take on things. You don't give yourself enough credit. We beg to differ, Dean and I, and
I'm not begging Jerry for anything.
It's always great to have you here, Jerry Sullivan. Yeah,
always love being here.
Yeah, man.
Wow, Jerry, is that the most effusive intro you've ever? What? Eric's going to do the intros from now on because he just.
Okay.
I'm making that my ringtone, my alarm for the morning.
That morning affirmation to get the.
Yes, that's all I need. I am good. I am a nice person.
I'm good enough. I'm smart.
We know you're a nice person. Nobody's ever said otherwise. I don't know why.
People like you, Jim.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
All right. Well, we're talking about the debut release from Van Halen. It is so weird. We're going to let the guests really kind of do the heavy lifting, but it's when I think we're going to get to the stats, but just to kind of tee it up, this was released in February of 1978. So this was released 48 years ago.
Yeah.
And when I think of Van Halen, I don't think of them as a creature of the 70s. I'm just putting that out there. It's like,
I agree.
They obviously are. They put out 2 albums in the 70s, right? But for me, and that was due to my consciousness of them, right? I wasn't conscious of them in the 70s. So for me, they are a creature of the 80s. But anyway, this was released in February of 1978, produced by Ted Templeman, who was their partner in crime and then would be DLR's partner in crime when he went solo as well. Mm. All songs written by the members of Van Halen, except You Really Got Me and Ice Cream Man. There were 4 singles released from this album, which is really ambitious.
Yep.
You Really Got Me hit number 36. Running with the Devil ran out of steam at number 84. Ain't Talking About Love did not chart. Jamie's Crying was also crying because it did not chart. It hit number 19 on Billboard, and it is 10 times platinum. Does anybody know what 10 times platinum, what status that is?
Diamond.
Yep.
Wow.
There you go. For Diamond Dave.
That is some good production value right there, man.
Let's
Fantastic.
end it there. That was perfect.
We have diamond status for Diamond David Lee Roth. And the interesting thing about it is, labels, or I guess it's the label, can resubmit. They can submit albums to be recertified over time, right? And say, well, we've sold a ton, so what's the next thing? After 10, I think that got recertified as 10 times in 1996. They never resubmitted it to be recertified. I want to think in my mind, Priz, what do you think, that since it's 10 times and it's diamond status, that they're obviously it's sold more, but they're leaving it like that?
I'm sure it has sold more, but come to think of it, I'm not sure I've heard of any album that they talk about being double diamond or ruby or anything else.
I think Rumors is double diamond, isn't it?
Eagles. Well,
really?
Eagles greatest hits
is the biggest selling album of all
the
time.
Absolute. It is like 4 times diamond, I think.
Yeah.
I just saw the interview with Don Henley on CBS this morning. So it just officially went. It's the most successful album.
Yeah, the most successful non-compilation obviously is Bad by Michael Jackson, but the biggest selling album of all time is Eagles Greatest Hits, the first volume.
And I have to say, the first time this album went platinum is personal to me because it happened to go platinum on October 10th, which is my birthday. So there you go. There you go. So there you go.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And one of two out. Van Halen is one of the few bands that could say they have 2 diamond albums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think there's only 7 diamond albums. I think there's only 7. I could be wrong. Anyway, who wants to take the who wants to handle the Gene Simmons connection?
I could do that.
Of course you can.
Anybody else chime in?
What a shock!
I'll expect Chris to fill in some of the gaps.
First of all, in part because I'm a big Kiss fan from when I was a kid. But I just read a book. I'm going to recommend this to everybody. It's a book written by a college professor named Greg Renoff. He wrote a book called Van Halen Rising, and it traces like the band from when the Van Halen brothers emigrated to America and all the way up to just before they started recording Van Halen 2. And they interviewed all of their friends, people who like booked them for parties at in their backyard. Like just the references and the primary sources for this book it's the most thoroughly researched biography by a band I've ever read in my life. But Gene Simmons was in LA. Him and Paul Stanley were scouting bands, and he was recommended by a couple of members of the Runaways to go check out a band called The Boys, which had Don Dokken and Mick Brown in it, who later went on to be in Dokken. And the opening band that night was Van Halen. And he saw Van Halen and kind of forgot about The Boys and was so taken by Van Halen, he said, I want to manage you, and let's go in and record some demos. So they recorded demos in 1976. I think some of them were recorded in LA, and they didn't finish. I think they still needed to do some vocals and guitar overdubs. And he convinced Bill Aucoin to fly them out to New York to finish the demos in Electric Lady Studios in New York. And Bill Aucoin and Paul Stanley listened. Bill Aucoin listened to the tapes and he wasn't blown away. And he saw how enthusiastic Gene Simmons was about this and realized that in 76, 77, Kiss was one of the biggest bands on the planet. And him and Paul Stanley said, if we let him do this, this is what he's going to focus on. And it's going to take his focus away from what we're trying to do. So Bill Aucoin politely told them that I don't hear any hits. I don't see it. Good luck. And Gene Simmons was like thunderstruck that he couldn't convince anybody in his camp to like champion the band. And he told them, look, I'm going to go out on tour. Here's the demo. You can use the demo for whatever you want. If you get signed or if you get some traction, great. And if you want, when I come back, if you still need help, I'm willing to help you. And then in the midst of all that, Gene Simmons was very taken with Eddie and Alex. And a lot of people, David Lee Roth actually felt like he was trying to sidle out Roth and bring Eddie and Alex into something that Gene Simmons was trying to put together for himself. And David Lee Roth was constantly making sure his presence was felt so that Gene wouldn't take them away. But in the process of all of this work with Eddie and Alex actually recorded demos that ended up becoming songs on Love Gun. There are 3 of them. One was Christine 16. One was Love for Sale, I think it was. I'm forgetting now. And then another song that he recorded, I think that ended up on his solo album. But if you listen to the demos for those songs, the guitar solos that Ace Frehley then goes on to play on the album Love Gun are like almost note for note, to the point where some people think Eddie Van Halen is actually on that Kiss album, those Kiss songs, and not Ace Frehley. So, and then that's what happened. So he championed the band. He didn't like the name. He wanted them to actually change their name to Daddy Longlegs, which obviously didn't end up happening because he didn't understand what was, he thought the name was terrible. But so his demo, they used to get themselves to play on the radio and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of the first step towards working, as they, got closer to a record deal. What really helped them out was they ended up hooking up with Marshall Burrell, who was Milton Berle's nephew. And he was like in the music industry, and between him and Kim Fowley recommended that Marshall Burrell check out Van Halen. Kim Fowley, the manager of the Runaways. And then they ended up playing the Whiskey and hooking up with Marshall Burrell is really kind of what put them on the road to connecting with Mo Austin and
then getting the Warner Brothers.
Getting the Warner Brothers deal. Yeah.
Nice. So Rob, anything you need to fill in there?
I would just say it's worth going to YouTube or someplace and checking out the Gene Simmons demos. They're called the Zero demos, ZERO, and it's definitely an interesting listen.
Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes. Is it fair to say, you said he was thunderstruck that Simmons, that Paul Stanley didn't like it. Is it fair to say more like he was God of Thunderstruck?
Yes, he was God of Thunderstruck.
Is that better? Is that a better?
Yeah,
no?
I would say so. And but to be fair though, like if you listen to the Zero demos, they really are very, very cool. But the one thing that you do notice when you listen to them is David Lee Roth. And in the book, one of the things that comes up is Ted Templeman says that Roth really had to work very hard to prove himself while recording. Like there's a story that Ted Templeman, and it could be just Ted Templeman telling tall tales, but that Roth, when he first saw Van Halen, was so not that Roth is the greatest singer anyway, but he was actually less than what you hear on the record. And it ends up that he thought about sidling out Roth to bring in Sammy Hagar, who was on the Montrose album that he produced. Now the reality of whether that really is true or not, it could just be Ted Templeman.
Revisionist history, perhaps.
Right, a little bit. But the idea being that my point is that if you listen to the Zero demo, you could see why he would say that, because Roth, it is really, it's not great. And you could see the Diamond Dave persona and what he did very well on the first Van Halen record isn't fully realized on those demos. What's also interesting about those demos is that Eddie hadn't started doing tapping yet. He didn't really start doing the tapping thing on his guitar until about 6 months before they went in to record Van Halen 1.
So there was still more growth to go. Jerry, where are you in?
If they got Sammy Hagar, Sammy Hagar, would their debut album been 5150? Think about that.
No, it makes sense. Roth, personified. I think he was more of the showman than he was the singer. So that would come in time.
And then Ted Templeman said, he goes, Sammy, it wouldn't have been the same with Sammy because what Roth brought in was that kind of that carnival barker, that personality, that swagger that made Van Halen in the late 70s so cool. That gets lost. As great as a singer as Sammy is, and he brought a lot of amazing stuff to Van Halen in his time, this wouldn't have been the right moment for him to be a part of the band. Yeah,
which we'll get to. We'll get to Roth. Jerry, go ahead.
I had read a story that Roth had auditioned a few times and was denied, but he had a PA system.
Yep.
And they thought it would be, after a while, they were it's cheaper to let him in the band than to have to keep borrowing his PA system. And that was kind of like how he finally got in, which, listening to all that kind of makes sense, but it's kind of odd that, he kind of is like, I'm going to take my ball and go home type of.
I'd heard the same
energy.
story where he kept on like almost pestering them to like and auditioning or wanting to join, and they just really weren't that interested in it, And I had read the same story that he had some equipment. It's like, well, he's got equipment, and kind of it checks off one box.
Yeah,
at least one box is checked off.
I mean, lyrically, like some of his lyrics and like some of the things he writes, that they really are kind of they're interesting, and they're like they don't come from the same place that you necessarily hear from like typical hard rock, and some of it's like kind of cool, like some of the stream of consciousness and like the breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, and like the way he writes lyrics, I think it is very cool, and I don't think that's enough credit, as playing a role in the development of the band.
Well, he had to. I think he had to prove him, something, right, in the sense because Eddie and I think Alex were accomplished musicians at this point. I mean, they were looking to really kind of, I think take it in a whole level, a certain level, but, Dave really kind of brought it in and just sort of, made it, I could see the Kiss connection there, like the sort of the showman, the show, the whole, like, we need something to sell it. We need, and it probably took some time for him to kind of develop that. So I think,
Well, those thousands of shows they played before the first album, aside from the males that are staring at Eddie in mystification, all the girls had to look at something. Yeah. So you needed David Lee Roth to be up there making a scene to garner their attention.
Let's kind of deal with that now, because I David Lee Roth is kind of he can be a polarizing figure because of his skill set or lack thereof. We can call it one way or the other, but where does Roth rank, and especially on this debut album? I think we kind of get. I think on this album we get everything that Van Halen's going to be. Like, there's not anything that is here that isn't represented even later down the road, and that's not a bad thing, because it's kind of, this is what it is. But you guys mentioned Roth as a frontman, and that's different than a lead singer.
Yes.
Where does Roth? So Jerry, where does Roth place in the pantheon of frontmen? Not necessarily lead singers, but as the guy who's representing the band and or calling attention to things.
Well, I am unapologetically Van Hagar. I loved this, and that's more because of the age I was when I came in. I loved this album and the early Van Halen, despite Roth, mostly because of I think he's a great frontman. He, the jumping, the energy, all that stuff probably helped them, like we were saying before, at the time. That's what they needed. It gives you entertainment. You're just like, I guess everything I read, it's a time when it was like, this was so new, and he's like flying around the stage, all this stuff. But I personally, I've always felt he's kind of a douche, and it always came off. And then even when, like, later on, like, listen to this, like, he was, to me, when you have a lead singer, it's a band. Like Sammy Hagar was more, they were all part of a band, despite, whatever the drama was behind. This always felt to me like you had the band, and even though it was called Van Halen, David Lee Roth was trying to make himself the center of attention. It even came out, like, I don't know if you guys remember years ago when he had a radio show after Stern left. And that was just like
so bad.
Bomb, because he was just horrible.
That's when he became an EMT, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
It is, but I can understand that at the moment, like, he gave Van Halen something to stand out. Like, my first experience with Van Halen was Jump. because that was just all over the radio when I guess I was like 10 or so when that came out. And that's when I first started finding music. And I always remember him just being the center of the attention, like jumping everywhere. As I moved on, I grew to like actually the other members of that band more. So despite David Lee Roth, I think he, when you listen to even when you listen to this, it feels like there's a lot of things he's doing to try, and he always puts his weird David Lee Roth kind of taste on it, like the bebopping he does and things, and the scream, or like what you brought out before with the soundbite, things like that, which never really fit the band for me. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I judge people on how I just think he's trying to be the center of attention. But you can't deny that he was a great front man for what they needed.
Yeah.
But even when I can listen to, I enjoy his solo stuff, the parts, the ones when he had Steve Vai on it. Mm-hmm. So I like the band behind him, and I can listen. Like, I love this album. I love all the Van Halen albums, but it's just, there is a point to me where I'm like, I've just had enough of David Lee Roth.
Got it. Okay.
Despite him being a great front man, I will then go to my Van Hagar years.
Chris, what do you have? And then I want to hear from Rob about Roth also in this era as the debut of this album as the front man.
See, I feel like for me, I like the whole vaudeville vibe of his delivery.
That is a good explanation of him.
Yeah, I think it's really cool, and I think that's what makes him a cool front man. And I definitely think he is a douche and he is very arrogant, but when he puts that into being the front man and his singing, and when his, it's not that he's definitely not, he's no Freddie Mercury, he's no Sammy Hagar, he's no Steve Perry, but what he does with what he has on those first 6 Van Halen records is part of what makes them very cool. And I think is part of what makes that sound so good. And yeah, Sammy Hagar as a singer blows him away. And those 4 Van Halen records that he made, was it 4? 4 Van Halen records that he made after Roth left the band are amazing. But for this iteration of Van Halen, what Roth brings to the table, I think makes those records are what they are, and what makes them part of what makes them special, as much as Eddie's guitar, Alex's drums, and Mikey's background vocals.
Oh, okay. But Rob, does Roth's lack of vocal prowess, is this debut album more akin to something that is more punk? Does it have more of a punk rock aesthetic because of that? Because he's not a wailing Robert Plant vocalist. Does that roughness give this album a kind of an edge and an advantage because it's that way?
I don't think so.
No,
I think it fits in as a good hard rock album, even with his vocal prowess or lack thereof. But one thing he does add to the band in a multitude of ways is marketing, both live, both, you're a 16-year-old girl, you pick up Van Halen 1 without David Lee Roth and you put it back in the shelf. You pick it up with David Lee Roth and you don't even remember there are 3 other people on the cover.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, so any marketing, advertisements of the band included that. And then in any interviews or articles, you stick the other 3 members of the band in there and you got a throwaway interview. You put David Lee Roth on MTV and he doesn't shut up until he's kicked out of the studio.
Yeah, you're going to get something from him.
Yeah, which is why I understand it was perfect for building Van Halen up at that time. Yeah. And it was, it was the best choice. It's just, I'm looking at it, I guess, from a 52-year-old.
I can only comment on
man.
The fact that my brother had seen them in those years before, before they became the Van Halen of the 80s. And his only comment to that was, this guy is fucking amazing. He's an amazing showman with the splits and like the, what he does, the prowess. that's what gave Van Halen, I think, their, that's what people noticed about them. I think more so than the musicianship at the time. Nobody really, girls, they don't care about Eddie Van Halen with his, nobody, that's great. That, of course, we love that shit. But, for the most part, when people go to see him, they're going to see the show. They're going to see him. He really gave that to the band. And I think that's what elevated them to what they became. And that's
he was like the ringleader of the band, right? He was kind of like the P.T. Barnum,
right?
And advocating for these people, and having and being able to kind of do the explosive stuff so their name would get out there. But let's talk about Eddie in this era. I mean, from the get-go, his guitar sound, like the guitar sound is there. Like it's
oh yeah.
Is it fair? Is it fair? Does everybody agree or disagree that he probably has the most recognizable guitar sound? I dare say of any. I think when you hear that, it's only him.
I would definitely put him in
a more recognizable sound.
I would put him in the top 5 of like, there are several others that I consider, but Eddie Van Halen's definitely in that first upper
pantheon.
Tier.
For someone that's not super into guitarists, it's very easy for, I think a lot of people would recognize like a Van Halen. If you're really into guitarists, then you have that advantage of the subtleties of style. But absolute, like even with like Michael Jackson, when he played on
Thriller,
Thriller,
Beat It, yeah.
I'm sure, even though it was uncredited, there are people that were like were into music at that time that were like, that sounds really familiar, like what. But it's
I remember my mom when my mom bought that album, brought it home. The first thing out of my brother's mouth was, "That's Eddie Van Halen." On that, because she was like, "Oh, what's this Van Halen, crap?" And yeah, Mom, but that's Eddie Van Halen playing guitar on that. Oh, is that so? In effect, he kind of gave something.
I was in a department store the first time I heard it. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, that's Eddie Van Halen.
I mean, you can't deny that the finger tapping, I think Steve Vai has done it, like other players have done it since then, but you instinctively go to Eddie Van Halen and when, he kind of sort of created that in that way.
And I think, we get his, this guy was 22 when they recorded this album, 23 when it came out.
Right.
And just listening to Eruption, I mean, it was like you had said that he wasn't really doing the tapping before, 6 months before, but he gets a showcase like Eruption, and that's Roth can't. That's not something that Roth can announce. He can't sing over it. You need to hear that on the record to hear that this guy is just on a different level at 22.
Yeah,
he's already notched out a particular guitar sound, right? He's already like locked in. Priz, what did they call it? The brown tone? Was it called the brown tone?
Yeah,
I think it was called, right. They called it like the brown tone or something.
The brown sound, yeah.
Brown sound.
Yep.
I would have loved to have been 18-year-old guitar player at that time, learning all my Led Zeppelin solos and stuff like that, and hear this album come out and just like put my guitar away, like, oh my God. It's like,
what is the
rules
point?
have changed.
We always say how many guitarists are undiscovered that are so great. How many stopped playing that could have been?
Like you go down the line, right? You go from like Hendrix to Clapton to Hendrix to Jimmy Page to and then it goes down like, oh, forget about it. I can't deal.
There's always someone else.
Right, exactly. There's always somebody who comes in.
Just think about the balls to put that on your first album, though, like that, or the belief that Ted Templeman had to hear him warming up and to say, "Roll tape and let's put this on." Like that's
let's make that a track.
Like the only other band I could think of that did that is when Metallica did it on their first album with Cliff Burton's bass solo. Like just like to do something like that is just incredible.
Yeah, it's it is a debut that literally checks off all the boxes for what this band is and would be. And that's really what I like about this album is when you listen to it, it's kind of like, this is Van Halen. Mm-hmm. This is what Van Halen 2 is going to be like, and so on. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not that it's repetitive. It's just that there's a formula there, right? There is a front man who's just kind of, he's never going to be a professional style singer. So they're going to, he's going to write material that plays to his strengths, but then you've got a virtuoso guitar player that's going to add like just the craziest stuff in and just really smart licks. You've got a gonzo drummer, who's got a big drum sound. Unfortunately, Michael Anthony is kind of, the odd man out, although we need to give him some respect.
Which is why he drank a lot.
We got to give him respect for those backing vocals.
I was just going to say
oh my God. It's such an essential part of Van Halen.
It is absolutely the sound of Van Halen. Those like high end vocals that is, who is that? I always, at first I always thought it was Eddie.
It's the two of them together, but Michael Anthony is the secret sauce that blends with Eddie's voice, but Eddie is in there as well. Yeah,
I think if you ask me, this is the true sound of Van Halen.
Yeah.
God damn it, baby, no, I ain't lying. I'm only gonna tell you one time.
That's the true sound of Van Halen. That is expert. That is expert singing. That is on key singing. It's everything we want. No, but Rob, when I said to you like the punk aesthetic, that's kind of what I was hinting at, is that because Roth is an imperfect singer, right? And there are some things he can't do. It gives it that more of a punky edge. It's like, we don't have a great singer, but he's got other skills that he brings, and it kind of it's kind of that we're an imperfect band that way because of it.
Well, I kind of think all four of them are kind of like self-taught.
Say again?
I think all four of them are pretty much self-taught and just, playing from shooting off the hip.
Mm-hmm.
I read once that Eddie Van Halen's guitars were never in tune to traditional tuners, but they were always in tune to themselves.
Mm. They're always like slightly off. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I found that interesting because so many guitarists trying to play like him are like, why does it sound off?
Well, that was the same thing with Chuck Berry, right? If you watch that Hail Rock and Roll.
Oh man, such a great movie.
There's that scene, we've talked about it before, where Keith Richards, because he's the band leader, he's like, you got to do, tune you. And Chuck Berry's like, don't touch my guitar. Yeah. This is how it is. And Keith Richards is like, well, it's out of tune, man. And
I love the banter between them.
Yeah, and Chuck Berry's like, don't effing tell me how to play my guitar. Don't touch my, like, they're really going back and forth. And Keith is trying to put this concert together.
You can't help but feel bad for Keith Richards in that movie.
He freaking loved Chuck Berry to the end, man. Like
that's what makes his sound, right? Chuck Berry's sound is generated by him. Eddie's sound is this, again, weird amalgamation of technique and amp. And he always claims, can anybody verify this? He always claims that he never used any effects, that he got his sound strictly through his amp.
So I was just about to say that the thing that's really cool about Eddie Van Halen is he had this Marshall head that he used his entire career from before the first Van Halen album onward. But he was also very much somebody who did the work as far as like experimenting with his sound and experimenting with his guitars. He wasn't afraid to take things apart to see how they worked and how he could make them better. The guitar that everybody knows him for, Frankenstein, he put it together with a pickup he took out of one guitar, and then a neck and a body that I think amounted to like $130. And then he also figured out like, how can I, he used an electric, something that like limited the amount of power going to the amp. It was called a variac, and he would plug the amp into that so he could get a distorted sound at a lower volume. He was one of the first people to realize that it would help the pickups if you put them in paraffin wax. Like he did a lot of experiment, beyond just improving his technique and beyond just like buying things. He would also do stuff to just like help improve his sound. And I think he used a phase pedal is the only pedal I think he ever really used. As far as like distortion and stuff, it was all from his hands in the amplifier.
Yeah, he didn't use that often to face.
No.
But you could definitely tell the songs that did it. You're speaking of the guitar that is the red and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
And it's the same guitar
Yeah.
that's on the cover of the album that's black and white. He didn't want people to like ape his stuff, so he went back later and took it apart and got bicycle red paint and changed the color of the guitar. But that is the same guitar that's on the cover of Van Halen 1.
That's what always made him stand. Like everything I read and everything, like he wasn't just into the music of it. Like he loved to do that type of shit to his guitar and play with his guitar, and that like
there it is. Chris has it.
There you go.
Look at that.
And that's
fantastic.
I think that's kind of, to be doing, just having, starting that at like 22 years old and to grow a career off of that's where you're getting your own sound, as opposed to someone that's, just using whatever company wants to give you guitars. Like you're playing around with your guitar, another, like in that the Frankenstein guitar, I had read where one of the pickups didn't work because he couldn't figure out how to rewire it or how to get it back. Like only one of the back pickup is the only one that worked. And it's that kind of like thought process that gets you your own sound, to where everyone kind of recognizes that that's you. You're not just playing music. You're kind of you're playing around with everything, and that's not every musician that's great and successful has that kind of mind, and that's where you develop your own signature type of style.
Yeah, you know what? You make a really good point, because it's ironic, or not very ironic, that Brian May built his guitar, the Red Special.
Yep. Yeah.
And he has he's another one who has a very particular, you hear that guitar and that's Brian May.
Yeah. And for some reason, I want to compare Eddie, and I don't know why right now, as he was looking for what kind of sounds he can get out of the guitar. Another person who has such a distinguishable sound by doing the same thing is Tom Morello.
Yep. Who also did the same thing, like that Arm the Homeless guitar, is like various tried and failed experiments until he got to a sound that he was happy with. That's what you hear on the Jack Machine records.
He tears guitars down, puts them back together.
Imagine if they spent all that time practicing.
Yeah.
Well, Eddie did the practicing too, man.
Let's get into this album. First track, Priz, Running with the Devil. Do you have a Running with the Devil story from high school that you can share with us?
I suppose you do remember that.
Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Refresh my memory and see if
I was a high school drummer.
This seems like a setup.
Running with the Devil is the very first song I ever played on stage at a high school talent show, with Adam Barish on bass, David Hudson singing, and Patrick Diffley on guitar, and Jimmy Dariano doing flash pots. And it was actually pretty terrible.
Dave Hudson? Really?
Yes.
Wow. When was this? I don't remember.
83?
Probably like 83, I think.
Okay.
There's a photo of it in the yearbook. And, I have a recording of us, and it really hurts to listen to.
We would love nothing more than for that to be uploaded to YouTube.
Yes,
it is.
I would love nothing more than the link that we could share with everybody that's listening.
I'll send it to you, not to share, but
wow.
Come on, you gotta.
So how was it? Give us just a quick 1 minute overview of how you guys put that song together. Because did you guys have the book? Did you guys have tabs? I mean, how did you guys pull it together in a high school band? Remember?
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I guess as far as from drums, I just learned the song. I think Adam Barish wasn't a bass player, but
it's pretty much one note, Running with the Devil. Anyway.
Took enough lessons to play the song, and I don't know how Patrick learned.
Yeah, because the guitarist has like the most heavy lifting to do. Everybody else can kind of fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So running with the devil, yeah. Famously, a one-note bass line, pretty much.
Is the most boring bass line to play ever.
It's probably where Michael Anthony gets the bad reputation from.
Yeah,
is you hear something like that, you're like, well, yeah, it doesn't. You have
setup.
Eddie Van Halen who's doing all this pyrotechnics, and then you have a guy that's going doom, 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 and it's like, oh, okay.
But I
get this.
But by the same token, like, when you have Eddie Van Halen doing what Eddie Van Halen does, what more as a bass? I mean, if you did anything more as a bass player, all you're going to do is get in Eddie's way.
Yes.
Well, he does it later on in the album, though. And later on in the album, he's got some walking bass lines.
Yeah, exactly.
There, you know.
And one of the things when I read that book, Van Halen Rising, is that Michael Anthony felt Ted Templeman didn't spend enough time on the bass sound. I happen to like the bass sound on this album. I like the fact that it's a little dirty and distorted. I think it's one of the things that makes the record cool. Like, I think Michael Anthony does not get enough credit or respect as being one of the ingredients that makes up this record, not just for his vocals, but I think his bass playing is very identifiable.
And tell me that Running with the Devil, that is not one of the most recognizable bass lines ever. If you just hear that bass, you know what's coming next.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It did its job. It did what it needed to do.
100%.
Sorry, I can't help when Diamond Dave wants to throw something in, he's gonna throw it in.
Chris, I have a question for you, a little off topic. You were just saying if Michael was that much better, he and Eddie would get in each other's way.
Yes.
What do you think about Eat 'em and Smile when you got Billy Sheehan and Steve Vai playing off each other?
Fair point. Fair. You know what? Fair point.
No, I was wondering whether you...
No. I mean, I happen to like Eat 'em and Smile. I never really thought about it like that, but that is a good point.
I think it was. I think just not to get too far into it. I think Eat 'em and Smile was Roth trying to like pack the court, right? He's like, well, I'm going to get the best of the best. When you don't necessarily need Billy Sheehan for Roth music, like it was almost like buying a fur coat when you live in Florida. It's like, yeah, I can. It's nice to have it, but you don't really need it, right?
No.
So and. Yeah, that's Michael Anthony kind of fit the bill. He had great harmony vocals, and he was there to anchor the drumming, right? He wasn't there to be
Jocko. There's a lot of energy on the stage, which when you're at a show, you want that, and he's like fucking going crazy back and forth on this. He's probably high as a kite, but that's all. That's all part of the fun.
A few belts inside.
So this album would kick off, until what I think until Fair Warning would be the first album without any covers, and kind of what made them. I think it was kind of smart of them adapting certain songs, which kind of makes it recognizable. It makes it easier to sell the sound. And you really got me, Eric, right? Almost probably as popular as like the original. No,
I think even more so at the time.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't know that it was a cover
and gave it a jump start, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you hear the Kinks version, and you're like, oh, okay, I like Van Halen's better at the time, right? Like you kind of appreciate, more and more as you go along, but it's just like, but at that time it was like, yeah, this is the only version,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first song I heard of. My uncle is he was 18 when I was born, so this was like right around the time when this record came out. And I remember I asked him to give me a copy of 1984, and he mailed it to me. And on the flip side was a bunch of other tracks, and two of the tracks were Eruption and You Really Got Me. And I remember going, what the fuck is that when I heard Eruption? And then it just goes right into You Really Got Me. And like, it's like, holy shit. Like, it's just like, you kind of sitting off, and one goes into the other. And then apparently I think it's all the same track. I think he finishes Eruption and then just kind of slides into You Really Got Me. And they cut them into two separate tracks. Like he kept playing. Like they played it all live in the studio in one shot, which is kind of crazy to think that that's how it was recorded.
Yeah, and the other cover is Ice Cream Man, which is a kind of somewhat obscure blues number, which is like, that's for me, that's like David Lee Roth in his Louis Prima.
Yeah,
right? I mean, he's able to kind of lean into that, and that would be something that, again, that makes Van Halen interesting, because it's almost, David Lee Roth really does it tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Right. So you're kind of getting exposed to this music or this style of performing it, but it's on a hard rock album, right? So it's kind of like, and even I forgot what the other song was. All of a sudden, there's all these doo-wops, and they're like the kind of song is like, which one was it?
Your love.
Show your love. I'm the one. I'm the one.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of
where they're like bop bop shoo bop.
So it's kind of wild that you're getting something like Eruption, right? And into You Really Got Me. Then you got something like Ice Cream Man and doo-wop vocals. It really does. It really kind of does show that they kind of I guess kind of see where their influences are, and their influences are far and wide. If they're doing like doo-wop stuff and throwing it in, even if it's tongue in cheek, it's still kind of like, we're going to put this on the record.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's
so
where
they still kind of thought, well, this would be kind of, because then they would do Happy Tree. They would really lean into it. Like later on, it would become like a thing. But I think that made Van Halen endearing in a weird way.
Yes.
Yeah. That's where the difference of, to me, Roth Van Halen versus Hagar Van Halen really was. Like, I always expect something like that from all the Roth albums. Like something, like the random doo-wops in the middle of a rock song. Whereas Van Hagar, it always seemed like they were just they fit their mold of whatever you want to call it.
We're serious
band,
musicians.
Whatever. Yes. Whereas that's what Roth, whether this is true or not, the world in my mind, I feel like Roth is the one that came up with all that stuff, because that's how he's getting his look. But like, the doo-wop stuff just seemed right. It does actually fit the song.
Yeah. Like it
stands out in the sound, but when you listen to the song, you're like, that kind of actually fits, because you hear the background vocal and then it just goes back and you're like, I don't know why that works, but it really seems to work. And I like how that all spits together, but I don't think you'd ever really see that from the Van Hagar, era. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, I think I kind of like that, because you almost get in two bands with the, with the core of the band is what really attracts me to them.
Yeah, it was easy to do an album, say, like Diver Down, which was just done in like a couple of weeks, I believe. And it was, a lot of covers on that record. I have to say, my all-time favorite version of Dancing in the Street is Van Halen's version. Like, it's just that guitar riff, that the whole, the way they do it, that became part of the thing, I think, doing those great covers.
Before we kick it over to Chris, Eric, you don't think that David Bowie and Mick Jagger's version of Dancing?
I was actually just about to say that.
Oh my God! Don't even,
it's the best.
I love Family Guy. That happened, and we all let it happen.
Yeah. I love Bowie. I love Mick, but come on, guys.
Just checking. Chris, what do you got? You've been waiting.
I was gonna say, so like, just to kind of feed off of Jerry, I definitely think Roth had a lot to do with that, like, showbiz type of vibe. But I also think why Van Halen is able to pull that off so successfully is that, their dad, Jan Van Halen, was a big band musician. So like, I think that's why, I think it might have been the brainchild of Roth, but I think they were able to carry it off because it's part of the DNA of what made Alex and Eddie. And I think that's why it worked so well when Van Halen
and it makes it fun to listen to, right? I think it just makes the music fun to listen to, So,
and as far as the two other things, Ice Cream Man, dude, you guys know who's playing acoustic guitar on Ice Cream Man?
David Lee Roth.
Roth is playing guitar on that.
Wow!
Until the electric guitar kicks in, it's Roth. And Show Your Love, for all of its vaudeville jazzy like vibe to it, it's actually a take on two songs. It's a take on Going Home by 10 Years After. Mm-hmm. And this one's a little bit more obscure. If you go and listen to a song called Parchment Farm by the band Cactus, right away. They were really big into Parchment Farm. If you go, they were really into the band Cactus, which was Carmine Appice and Tim Bogart from Vanilla Fudge.
Okay,
they were really into that band. So if you go and find that song, you can see where they got the idea for Show Your Love.
Cool,
and that is why you are on this podcast.
Exactly. Parchment Farm. Chris.
Yes.
Does a band know they've made it when they get sampled?
They get pissed off.
You know, if a band gets sampled on a rap song, does that mean they've made it? Is that like, you know,
great rap?
No, you don't think so? You don't think
No.
that's an indicator of like, wow,
Billy Squire doesn't have to worry about
they
writing anything else now.
Say that again, Rob.
I just think somebody ran across a piece of music that they wanted to use.
But they must have heard it somewhere. I mean, you don't just try. I mean, for Tone Loc to use Jamie's Crying is kind of obscure, right? It's kind of an obscure song even for Van Halen.
Yeah, but someone brought it to him. I would assume.
Somebody must have said, "Oh, this is an interesting lick."
Yeah,
right. And you know, Funky Cold Medina, and $180,000 later for not asking
all they
permission.
got for that?
$180,000 it cost them.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's in what, 1980 what money?
Yeah, but like now I think they get publishing. Like they get like publishing.
Probably get added as a songwriter. Well, it depends. It was an out of court
Vanilla
settlement.
Ice's lawyers.
Yeah, it was an out of court settlement, so they just give us this, and we'll forget the whole thing.
Right.
The Funky Cold Medina. Our second Tone Loc reference, because Tone Loc was in Heat. So
I was just listening to a podcast today about Ace Ventura, and they were talking about did we really need Tone Loc in that movie?
Yeah,
he had a second career going on.
Oh man,
oh boy. What else do we have about this? I mean, I just like I said in the beginning, it's a blueprint for a band, you know, and I don't want to compare them to AC/DC, but the comparison fits, meaning that from this album forward, and with the Roth era, let's, you know, kind of section off the Roth era. Eric, do you agree? I mean, this is, you know, this is kind of what you could expect is they kind of laid the blueprint of here's our sound. It wasn't until the Sammy Hagar era that things really, that there was an opportunity for a change, a reconfiguration, and maybe that's why everything got tired.
I think this kind of band, if you weren't really like following them religiously, like let's say you were like diehard fan and you were like, you know, into every album, as a casual fan of the stuff and the input that they were putting out, you come to expect that sound, I think. I you know, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think they found a very signature sound that they can rely on, and they went with it. And I think it definitely worked for them. Like I say, like, you know, if you're like, oh my God, you know, they're doing the same thing over and over and over, which wasn't the case for us back in the day, because we were, you know, is a new Van Halen out? Like that, is that from this album? Like we weren't really, I don't think we were really paying attention as much. You know, because we were a lot younger and we were just digging what we were hearing and stuff. And, you know, so I you know, yeah, I think that's what sold, you know, at least back then. I think that hearing it, you know, very heavy airplay on the radio and that kind of thing. And if you had a certain sound, you got it, you went with it, and people, you know, dug that. So
when you say a unique sound, do you mean something like? Anyway, is it safe to say?
I mean, you got to admit there wasn't really anything else like it. AC/DC, they did their own. Everything.
They had a sound.
They had a sound, but they didn't sound like Van Halen. Van Halen didn't sound like AC/DC.
That's what
right?
I mean.
Every band had their own click, their own thing.
But insofar as like Van Halen had a sound, like, and maybe you guys might disagree with me or not, but like, I feel like every record, there was something unique about each one. It wasn't like it was like each one was a copycat, cookie cutter of the other. Like I think Fair Warning, you could tell that it's the same band that recorded Van Halen 1, but Fair Warning is very experimental and has a lot of other stuff going on. Like, so as identifiable as their sound is, they definitely built on and didn't just ape what they did the record before.
Well, that's my point. Like the absolute, like, you know, audio files, like, you know, you and I have become, Chris,
right?
You know, we would recognize such, but you know, as like I said, like the casual fan, and as us as younger kids back in the day, we're really, you know, looking into that as much. but you like I said, you came to rely on a certain, like Van Halen. Oh, that's Van Halen. That's AC/DC. That's the Police. That is, at the time, all this stuff was coming out and everybody had their unique sound.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of bands tripping over each other, like sounding each like.
Right.
And I dare say, like later on, back, like later in the 80s, and then of course in the 90s, there were a lot of bands that I dare say that did that. They did sound alike. And at that time frame, not really.
You could hear a song and not know what album it's from, but you could know who it is.
Right.
And that's where they get their signature.
Exactly.
And that's, I'll piggyback the later on, a lot of the music now, they're just.
Everybody sounds the same.
Yeah. Well, I think it was, I don't think anybody, could, Rob, I mean, piggyback off this or nobody could imitate what Van Halen was doing, right? Because there is no
like they made
his guitar sound was not user consumer available. It was really particular to him, and his style was people didn't know how he was doing the tapping and making some of these things in the beginning. Yeah. So it's really not. It's not. It would be easier to for the cult to kind of sound like AC/DC when they made their hard rock turn, right? It's easier to kind of fit into that than for a band to say, we want to sound like Van Halen, because you can't do that without like someone trying to be a David Lee Roth and someone trying to be an Eddie Van Halen. Like, it ain't going to work. Yeah.
But how many bands in the 80s absolutely tried to do that?
Yeah.
How many? I mean, even to the point where I'm the band I'm thinking of right now, White Lion. If you look at White Lion, their lead singer looked like Roth. Their guitar player looked exactly like Eddie.
Vito Bratta,
who is an amazing guitar player in his own right, but they were very obviously going for a look.
So, I got an interesting thought here. Since we're talking about the bands having their individual style, if you take early Van Halen and then the Van Hagar years and take out the guitar solos, which obviously sound like Eddie, could you tell they were the same band?
No.
The songs just sound different.
That's a good point.
You've got a different influence, right? You have a different songwriter. You have a
Absolutely.
different.
You know what? I make the argument they would have done that anyway, because if you listen to 1984, the next natural step is 5150. So I know everybody always goes to blame Sammy, but I really think this is what Eddie wanted to do, and this is where Eddie was going, no matter who was the lead singer.
The drums sound more electronic, and just
he was ready for. I don't know if it was, less of the the shtick, and then more of the sort of like let's do music. Let's go with the music now. Now we're ready. We're maturing. I want to do this. This is what I think was there all from the beginning, but I think he needed to get out there. So with Sammy Hagar on board, you got a great singer now. You got, we have an established, sort of sound now. We can really get serious with this.
You have another musician in Sammy Hagar.
And he was a guitar player in his own right.
And a good guitar player.
Roth made it pretty easy, covering California Girls and Just a Gigolo. Like he kind of, I don't mean that in a bad way. Like he really did kind of like put himself in a certain lane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As kind of the clown prince of MTV, right? All his, every video was a parody, and he was doing all these covers, and it was the Louis Prima, Bozy Bop. And like you could see, like, how do you come back from
You're
that?
Good at that.
Because when Roth did launch his solo career, it still had a lot of those trap. Eat 'Em and Smile is a great album. I loved it. I devoured it. I even have it on Spanish in cassette. He recorded the whole
that's right. They recorded a Spanish version. That's right.
I have that when it first came out.
That's fantastic.
Which is it's an amazing album in Spanish. It's like hearing Roth sing in Spanish. It's like, en la calle de Tobacco. So he's singing Tobacco Road, it's just amazing. But
it's like a halftime show.
It literally is a halftime show on cassette in Spanish. But I think Roth kind of made it easier for that break to happen as well, and be like, we've been through a lot. We've been to the mountain together, but this is not the direction we're going in. But again, in the beginning, you can I can hear on Van Halen 1, I can hear like the hunger. I can hear the fire is there. Like you kind of, after listening to it so many times, I'm like, and that's why I keep going back to the punk aesthetic. Like they had that kind of like that drive, that like garage band desire.
Go for the throat.
You know, it wasn't super polished, although the playing is virtuoso and the production is great, right? And that's what makes it a great album. The band is kind of like a hungry band, and on this album, I really felt it. I really kind of was like, oh, okay, like I get why this album was so important, not just in the Van Halen legacy, but in the late 70s, right? Because these guys aren't. I guess to tie this up, let's kind of put them. I think we need to try and put them in somewhere. I don't think of them as classic rock and roll of the 70s. I think of Boston. I think of Led Zeppelin. I think of Pink Floyd. I think of Elton John.
True.
It was
weird.
Van Halen as 70s classic rock.
Or Eric, go for it. It was such a weird like time frame. It was like late 80s, like late 70s.
Like the Cars.
Right. Very well in the sort of between punk and new wave. Like we were like smack in the middle of those 3 years that but it was it's a great feeling to know we were there from the very beginning, though, to hear that for the first time. It was fresh. It was, I remember those days of hearing that album for the first time, and whether or not you're a big fan of them or not, it was something new. It was something, it wasn't Zeppelin. It wasn't the Who, it wasn't the Stones. This was an American band doing something probably just as vibrant.
Kids. Yeah.
And vibrant and sort of bold like that, and to have a guitarist such as Eddie Van Halen at the gate, just, killing it, with Eruption and that kind of thing. It was like, whoa. And that alone just like makes you take notice. And it's just like, damn,
Yeah.
So it kind of set the pattern. I guess, but anyway.
I wonder if Eddie would have
everybody take a crack at it. Priz,
would Eddie have been so influential in anything, do you think, with any other band? Or did it have to be Van Halen? Did it have to be Van Halen?
I definitely think, like a lot of the bands in the 80s, come on. I mean, everybody wanted to be Eddie Van Halen, whether they admitted it or not, whether they're trying to sound like him or not. I believe that for a fact. There's just no doubt, because he was the man. He was the new Jimmy Page at the time of the period. Everybody aspired to be him. I think people were talking about him.
Yeah, but Eric, could he have been in any other band and still been as successful?
Yeah, because that's how.
I think
that's an interesting question.
Would Foreigner or Kansas or one of those bands worked with Eddie Van Halen? Would Eddie have still stood out as a
that's the thing.
superstar?
If they let him be Eddie Van Halen as opposed to like a background musician, whatever you would call him, even though we know other, take Metallica, Kirk Hammett, and he's an amazing guitarist, but it's a different. He's known as part of the band. Like, I think Eddie Van Halen would have still stood out. Either the band would have flopped because they wouldn't have worked with, one of their strongest points, or they would have recognized that we have something here that that you have to kind of let loose.
I don't know if the success of the band, it wouldn't have been as much as that as it would have been just, well, we got Eddie Van Halen. That's it. I mean, we got this guy who is, would no matter what, this guy is a fucking, he's a superstar outside of what can be accomplished. I mean, I would have loved to have seen him in that kind of iteration of something. We talk about supergroups a lot. Right? What would be the ultimate supergroup to have Eddie Van Halen with somebody, from other types of bands?
Yeah, but that's in a supergroup. But Chris is going to get mad for me saying this, so I'll just get ready. Yep. If you put Eddie Van Halen in Kansas, he becomes just another prog guitarist. I'm sorry, because all those guitarists are kind of virtuoso. Like honestly, right? They're all great guitarists, but they're all in that thing. I think Van Halen kind of because it was such a carnival, because you had David Lee Roth jumping around, it created a spectacle. And that was the point, is Roth was the lightning rod to get people to come out and jump around. And then there's this guy in the back with long hair just ripping off all this.
And the fact that we recognize Eddie Van Halen above the guy jumping around and make I don't know that when you look at bands.
I don't know, Dean. I'm sorry, Chris.
No, it's okay. No, do it. Say what you're gonna say. Everybody's cutting me off. That's fine. I cut everybody else off, so it's all good.
No, he stands out, man. I mean, there are certain guitar players that just have that particular sound. I don't think that he would be in the same lane as other guitar players. And, there are several guitar players that I agree that are in several of those kinds of bands that you don't know about. But Eddie Van Halen, he had a certain sound, he had a certain technique that I think stands above.
Okay.
But whether or not you're a fan of it, that's another story, but it's like, but that's the fact, that I think that is the thing.
Fact,
I think, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, but, Chris, go ahead.
That's okay. But the other thing I was going to say is, like, when it comes to Van Halen 1 or any other Van Halen record, it's not just the fact that Eddie does this mind-blowing shit on the guitar. It's that he's a songwriter. And you got to remember, 90%, maybe not 90%, let's say 75% of what becomes a Van Halen song starts with Eddie. And it's not just the fact that he rips off these crazy leads. It's like, the riffs and the melodies and stuff that he's designed in these tracks. Or if you plug that into any other band, if they let him be the songwriter that he is, Eddie, I think, rises to the top. I mean, the songwriting on Van Halen 1 was so mind blowing to me. I could still, like, 30 years later, remember the first time I heard this record. Like, and that's not because he's ripping all these crazy leads, because anybody can do that. Satriani can do that. Vi can do that. It's that he can write a really memorable pop song is what really makes Eddie Van Halen what Eddie Van Halen is.
That's true. Yeah. Good point.
Yep.
Very good point.
I dare say it might be lyrics like this. I mean, that's just like the cherry on top.
Woohoo!
Bozy Bop.
See, I wish you had that one. That's the one I would love to hear right now. Bozy.
Well, that wasn't on Van Halen 1. All right, let's close this out. Let's go around. Let's do some favorite tracks, and I think that will kind of help round out where everybody's at. Let's start with the guy that played it the first time on stage. Give us two or three of your tracks. Obviously,
standout tracks for me. I'd say I'm the One, Atomic Punk, and On Fire.
Nice.
Are probably my standouts.
Deep cuts. There he goes. Are we gonna have everybody pick something different enough that the whole album is a pick? Jerry, what do you got?
No, I'm already gonna screw it up. Because my favorite was Atomic Punk, and I'm the One for the line, "We came here to entertain, leaving we aggravate you." And that just summed up David Lee Roth for me in all. And but Atomic Punk is actually my favorite track, just from the start of that. And also, ain't talking about love, but I like hearing Sammy Hagar play that or sing that.
Ooh, wow.
I know. I don't care though.
Shots fired.
Yes.
Eric, what do you got?
Goodness. I mean, the entire side one is fantastic for me, but I agree with Jerry. I like Atomic Punk. I do like Feel Your Love Tonight. There's certain tracks that I kind of dig that are, not great, but just sort of there. But so, yeah, that for me, that would be, but for me, it's side one of that record. It's the one, it's what I know. It's what I've heard. It's what I remember. Just the impression that I got from it was that opening, salvo of those songs right there. So, so that's it.
All right. Chris?
Yep.
Running with the Devil, Show Your Love, or I'm the One rather, and On Fire. Just, I mean, that song was always their opener, and it's really super intense, and it's just a great song.
Interesting. I'm going to go with You Really Got Me, only because it was so iconic. It really was the introduction of Van Halen to the world, and they really did pick a song that played to their strengths, and allowed them to kind of really just play within an established song that people knew, but then to introduce people to the Van Halen sound, because it was nothing like the original. Much like Eric, I'm going to go with "Feel Your Love Tonight" because that's just a great poppy. Just a great poppy song. It's just kind of fun.
It's got like a Beach Boys vibe to it.
And I'll go with Jamie's Crying. Just because it's interesting. And I like when they do interesting things, even if they're again just trying some different stuff. And I think this album has enough different stuff that if people only know Van Halen from like Diver Down or 1984, which was really kind of my awareness level when I got into them, I think it's important to go back, and even the people that know the Van Hagar stuff, like Jerry and it's easy to look at Roth now, and it's easy to look at video of Roth now that's all over YouTube of him just
it's actually, he should have quit. He should have stopped when Van Halen
he's actually playing the Capitol Theater in Port Chester. All the people up here in New York, we should all go together and just just ridicule, not going to see a good show, but more to watch a car crash. What do you think, Priz?
I think he should tour with Axl Rose, and they could just
there
you go. Other singers that have lost their voices.
Have a screech off.
Yeah,
Roth, Vince Neil, and Don Dokken.
Oh my goodness! Can you imagine the harmonies on that, man?
And John Bon Jovi, who drops vowels. He just says things phonetically when he sings. He does. It's anyway.
You gotta know when to walk away.
Yeah,
they can't. You know what? It's easy for us to say that.
Yes,
and I look at it much like athletes.
Like Lindsey
It's
Vonn.
hard to walk away from the roar of the crowd, even when you can't hit a home run anymore. You can't throw a touchdown like you used to. But there's something, how many times have baseball players retired and then unretired, like Tom Brady, right? They can't. You can't walk away. And I understand. I understand it, even though they know they're not doing their legacy any favors, right?
I don't think they care though, because people will still cheer, even though there'll be videos of people mocking them. There will still be people, and
people are. I mean, they're still selling out. You know, stadiums, and look at Eagles right now. I mean, Don Henley is just
lip syncing from what
lip syncing. You got freaking Vince Gill. Where did he come from? Like, why is he in the band? Like, I don't understand. Like the dynamic.
So
it's I get it, but it's just I don't know.
A group that's cobbled together. It's a Franken group.
Yeah, exactly. And
speaking of which, Foreigner is touring with Leonard Skinner. Neither band has a single original member.
Zombies.
Well, I think it was like that with Earth, Wind, and Fire in Chicago at some point, right? I mean, they keep.
Chicago's going out on tour. I'm like, there's no one.
Chicago, at least you have 2 out of 3 people from the horn section left, and Robert Lamb is still
Robert Lamb sometimes is there, but a lot of times he's not, or he doesn't.
Well, they tour without Robert Lamb.
Either he's there and he doesn't sing because he's got so he might be there for like keyboards, but a lot of times he doesn't sing anymore either.
I had no idea, man.
So we're into zombie. We're into zombie band.
No,
you got. I mean, Earth, Wind, and Fire. You got Philip Bailey. I think he's still around, but you got the Maurice White is gone. The White brothers, the drummer, he's gone. I mean, it's like who's left? Most of the original Phoenix horns are gone. I know that because of the Phil Collins Association, but it's like,
well, there you go.
Yeah, they're not the original members, so it's just
you know what it is. I think people want to they go for the good time.
Fair point.
They're not as
they want to hear the songs.
We can be pretty brutal, and we are. Well, we're pretty. Our stand. I don't want to say we have high standards, but we're pretty brutal to be honest, when it comes to that kind of stuff.
It's just a
casual person is
judging them on
they want to hear the songs.
In love with them now.
Yeah. Say again, Jerry?
That's the thing. We're judging them on. We're remembering on what drew them to us, which
right.
I guess you can too. But it's sad when because I've heard. See, I wished I had seen AC/DC in their whatever prime, or even their late prime. And now I've just heard horrible things about how they sound. So I did, a couple of years ago, I went to see Iron Maiden with my son, and they were just, it's tough because they were just as good. But the jokes were, are they going to be wheeling around in wheelchairs? Are they got? But it was it is hard. Like, I could totally understand why they still get up and try and do it, because what a freaking rush that has to be.
Yeah.
To have a crowd cheering for you.
Yeah, what else?
Absolutely. And people go to see it. I mean, some people just want to hear the great songs.
Yeah.
And they don't care who's, at this point, they don't really know who's doing what, in some cases. But
we, like, oh, that's not the bass player. They're like, who cares? I don't care.
But the point is that, right? But people like us, we do. And we've been there from the beginning, and because we got problems. There is something to be there is something to be said of getting, sort of like that becomes part of it, is like you get to, you think you get to know who's doing what, and that becomes part of it. And when you see somebody sort of like not there anymore, like Phil, like with the last Genesis tour, I had a chance to go. I almost bought a ticket. I was like, maybe I should go just to go, because I'm a huge fan, but I did not want to see Phil Collins sitting in a chair. Yeah. I'm sorry. He can't sing. He can't hear. It would have been sad for me to just sit there and experience that. I remember Phil as the energetic guy singing, running behind the drum kit, going back, sweating like he was the shirt off. That's the guy I remember. That's the guy that's what I was into. And I don't know. There's some, it's
all get old.
There's something to be said for that, but it's just, we do. We all get old.
Yeah. And it sucks.
I think we'll leave it there. We're all getting old and it sucks. I think that is the... I think that's the... I think we kind of leave it there.
There's your t-shirt.
I think that says it all. Yeah, we're all getting old and it sucks. Listen to the 3324 podcast if you want more.
Wow. We need therapy. I think we need serious therapy.
We just came to therapy, right? I think we all just came to the realization that we're grumpy, we're old, and we hate replacement
I don't think we're grumpy. I think we're trying to keep it real. We're trying to keep it up. We're trying to be upbeat.
We're realists.
This is our
go listen to Van Halen 1. It's on all the streamers. It's on physical media as well. You can grab it. There was a remaster from a few years ago where they remastered the whole catalog. So go check it out. It's a great... It's probably up there with some of the greatest debuts, because, like I said, just to tie it up, it's a sound that had never been heard before, especially coming at the end of the 70s, when all these classic rock groups kind of were lumped into one thing of, the ELO Kansas Boston Meatloaf recipe mixing bowl. You get this new sound that would close out the 70s and usher in the 80s. So that's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast. If you've listened this long, you can hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, and or YouTube if you want to comment about the album. Go ahead, and also in your podcast provider, there's a follow button. So just hit that and you'll get a gentle notification, kind of like a gentle little tappy tap on the shoulder when new episodes come out. And this way you'll never miss one of these great sessions. And we, of course, have to thank our special guest for coming.
God damn it, baby. No, I ain't lying to you.
I have no idea what he said, but we thank him anyway for being on this episode. He's very hard to understand sometimes. Robert Prisman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming out. Jerry Sullivan, 2 episodes in a row we've recorded with you.
Yeah, man.
Thank you. Always fun.
He's trying to hit for the cycle. He wants to get on a top 5 next week to hit the cycle. Christopher Clark, as always.
Thank you for having me, as always.
For joining us. And of course, Eric and I will be waiting for you each week with a new episode hot and ready out of the oven. But until then, for Chris, for Jerry, for Rob, for Eric, this has been Dean. We'll catch you on the flip side.
You've been listening to the 3324 podcast with Dean Legiro and Eric Kuber. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider, so please like, subscribe, and rate to become a part of the 3324 family. Your feedback is important, so make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at 3324 podcast and on Twitter at 3324P to join the conversation.